Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jesse Taylor. I'm the Vice President here at PlanFees, also one of the co-founders. I'm happy to have you all on today, and we're going to get going here with the webinar. And we're very excited to be talking about our brand new tool, Prism365. It's our brand new advisor fee and service benchmarking report. We are just rolling it out this week, and thank you all for attending the webinar and wanting to learn a little bit more about this great tool. And in this webinar, what we aim to do is to give you a better understanding of how fees and services compare to the marketplace when it comes to advisory fees. We understand, as you all do, that having a robust service model is a critical factor in winning and retaining business. And this Prism 365 report gives you, as an advisor or as a service provider, if you want to provide this as a value add, a great new resource to show your value as an advisor to your clients, or even open up conversation when it comes to prospects. We'll be taking Q&A and at the end, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to submit through the chat or Q&A feature through Zoom. So a little bit about PlanFees. We want to talk a little bit about benchmarking today. That's what we focus on. We're a fee benchmarking subscription fintech platform, and we got into the business because of the issues that happen to fee benchmarking today. One, it takes too long to produce. Two, there's a lot of inaccurate data sources, especially because a lot of the information out there comes from 402 data, not necessarily from retirement plan specialists. Three, it's too expensive. There's a lot of expensive options when it comes to fee benchmarking. Or it's just an actual paper book that many of us use. Won't get into that too much. Additionally, the fee benchmarking challenge that you all face is that it's one of the core 3 F's: funds, fees, and fiduciary. And you need to have an objective process. You need to analyze all providers. And competitors are constantly trying to open up a door with your clients when it comes to fee benchmarking. And you all know from ERISA that you as a fiduciary need to determine reasonableness. But the challenge is, what is reasonable? So best practices dictate that you should benchmark a plan's fees annually, and then take a plan out to bid to look at the investments and services along with the fees periodically. Every 3 to 5 years is usually the best practices. And then from an advisory fee benchmarking perspective, it's important to understand and show your value, because even if you're benchmarking a service provider, your plan sponsor clients need to benchmark you, and you need to show that what you're delivering in your service model is competitive and is reasonable. Like I said, at PlanFees, we're a subscription fintech platform. We're backed by industry vets with more than 200 years of experience. This is a great and easy tool to help solve all those benchmarking challenges that we talked about. And ideally, as you'll see, this tool helps you save time so you can grow your business. We have a couple core tenets here at PlanFees. One is being accurate. So it's verified data. We have a database of over 60,000 plans, comes from over $700 billion in assets. We have customized asset bands, so it's really easy. You no longer, when it comes to an annual fee benchmarking, does your $5 million plan need to be compared against $9 or $10 million plans? We also have data integration with top record keepers, TPAs, and investment managers. And what's really cool with our platform is we have a lot of great technology that goes into our web and mobile app. Another core tenet is being on demand. We know that there's a lot of options out there. You can get some benchmarking reports from service providers. We think as an advisor out there that it's best to go direct to the source and have it be on demand, and to be able to produce a benchmarking report in a matter of minutes. So we have the 2-minute benchmark, whether you're using our annual fee benchmarking tool or a brand new Prism 365 advisor fee and service tool. This, either one, it just takes a few moments to produce. And then we want it to be report revealing. So the reports are beautiful, they're very nice, very graphical, and they're going to be able to break down investments, record keeping, administrative, advisory fees. Or when it comes to the brand new Prism 365 report, we look at investment due diligence, RFP and fee benchmarking, fiduciary education, and financial wellness, and the service delivery and frequency of those services from you as an advisor. So let's talk about the Prism Report. That's our traditional benchmarking report. We rolled it out early in 2020. It's a total fee benchmarking report. It looks at plans of a similar size, customizable bands, can be run annually or on demand. It's really unlimited use if you're a subscriber to this tool. Limited data points are required, only 5 or 6. That's where we get our 2-minute benchmark from. So it's quick and simple. And it's a very low cost, and we'll be sharing some of the cost purposes later. This has been wildly popular over the last year. Over 30,000 Prism reports were created over the past 12 months. So advisors have really used this, especially during the past year in the pandemic, to one, bring value to their clients, and 2, start conversations with prospects. And now our new Prism 365 tool looks at advisory fees and services. Again, it's really easy to use. The database comes from over 1,000 advisors, and it's the only report in the industry that benchmarks the frequency of the services that are delivered from advisors. And again, it's also low cost. Either report, you can sign up directly at PlanFees.com. We also have, you may have access to it through a broker dealer or RIA, depending on if they bought it at enterprise level. The Prism tool, the total fee benchmarking, or the Prism 365, the advisor fee benchmarking, are both. You can sign up for one or the other at $49 a month for either one, or as a bundle for $69 a month. Really easy to sign up at PlanFees.com. But today's webinar, we really wanted to focus on the Prism 365 survey and benchmarking report. So like I said, this data, we went out over through the end of 2020 and surveyed over 1,000 advisors. We got fee data from over 20,000 plans, and the service model and service frequency from over 10,000 plans. And here's a couple key trends from that report. When we looked at the advisor types, maybe it's kind of self-selecting of the folks that we work with, the folks that utilize PlanFees, but 30% are RIAs, only 11% are broker-dealer only reps, and 56% are hybrid. And when it comes to the firm size of each one of those who responded to our survey, you had a vast majority, over 75% of those respondents with 1 to 5 plans, and then about another 24% or so with 6 or more staff. From a revenue perspective, we looked at this, the folks that responded to the survey, 45%, so nearly half, have under $500,000 in firm-wide revenue in the retirement space, and 55% have over $500,000, with a couple, a nice percentage, 13 and 15%, over $1 million or over $2 million. And from a revenue type perspective, this is something that we found pretty interesting, was that almost 75%, or 3/4 of revenue on average, came from a fee for service instead of a commission-based model. So that we see this as a trend that's really growing, and this is something that we're going to be tracking over time here at PlanFees. From a plan perspective, the folks who responded to the survey, you see it's a nice bell curve, 25 to 100 plans being the normative mean. This is labeled revenue, but this should really say assets under management. And you see a majority of those assets under management coming in the under 250 million or under 500 million, but you do have quite a good number of larger firms with $500 million or more. And then a really nice broad spectrum of respondents in terms of the plan size ranges that they service. So again, you see a lot in the under 20, but you see 50% or more of the respondents of the survey do work over 20, over 25 million. That starts to drop off over 50 million, but you do have a lot of large plan advisors who responded to the survey. And then kind of getting into the meat of this, we asked all the respondents of our survey what their average fees are in certain plan ranges. So under 1 million, 1 to 2.5, 2.5 to 5, et cetera, all the way up to over 100 million. And we asked both dollar amount and basis point. And so you see here the purple graph, a nice expected downward slope. We've compared this to our other databases that we have. We've compared it to the 20 or 30,000 examples that we've got through the PlanFees annual benchmarking tool and compared it to other industry sources. Very accurate, very comparative. And what it shows is that the majority of the folks who responded to this have a robust service model. So that's what we also saw. The Prism365 survey evaluated firms on 15 points. So in 5 core categories: investments, RFP benchmarking, fiduciary governance, employee engagement, as well as those fees. And we asked in each category whether a service was included in the base fee, had an additional charge, or was not offered. And then in many cases asked for the frequency of those services. And we're going to get and show a couple examples of what that looks like. From an investment committee meeting frequency, this is an area when we looked at the benchmarking reports that were out there in the marketplace. One issue that came up consistently from the advisors that we talked to is that they say, yeah, we see that 90% or 95% of advisors include this service, but they, as an advisor, were saying, I include this at a higher frequency. I'm meeting with my clients semi-annually or quarterly, whereas a lot of advisors might have a low service model. So that's where we focus this report, is really to be a lot about frequency. And so you see here a nice distribution when it comes to the purple would be an annual investment committee meeting, the light teal would be semi-annual, and the blue would be quarterly. And we see probably the expected distribution in terms of frequency as plans get bigger. Where you see the opportunity is in the low middle market, I'd say the $5 to $15 million, where you see a nice even distribution between annual, quarterly, and semi-annually. So this is an area that advisors can focus in. If they bring a high frequent service model to clients of that size, you can maybe disrupt a current relationship with an advisor. Concurrently, if you do offer a lower service model in terms of frequency, because that's just what you provide, you can also say, hey, this is the norm. There's 40% or 45% offer the same service model, so I'm in line with the marketplace. We asked about RFP and fee benchmarking frequency. So we not only asked, but the frequency of a live bid RFP, which is very important. You see a big distribution in terms of every 3 or 4 or 5 years are not offered at all. But when we look at annual fee benchmarking, obviously that's where PlanFees thrives, but we see a good amount of folks in the smaller market who don't even offer this service. And even those who do say they offer this service, what we find is that almost 60% of advisors aren't even delivering an annual fee benchmarking because it's too cumbersome or too expensive. So that's one area that you can use PlanFees for. We talked about fiduciary fitness or fiduciary process review. We talked about the frequency and delivery of that. This is an area where a lot of advisors say they do this. They might give a plan review, but this is also, if you have a robust fiduciary governance and education model, if you're using something like Hero 7 or CFAX or through RPAG, you have a nice model. This is something where you can disrupt a current relationship. And then what we found the most interesting was the education and financial wellness. So the most commonly delivered frequency of employee education or enrollment meetings was between 1 and 4 days, with 1, 2, and 4 being the most common. But you do see more days, between 5 and 9, or even 10 days or more offered at a larger plan level. But you still see a lot of advisors, a good percentage of probably nearly 15 or 20% at the smaller end, who don't provide employee education. So if you have this capability, this is an area where you can create a wedge. And then I wanted to segment this kind of by plan count. So advisors with 0 to 24, 25 to 99, 100 plans or more in terms of financial wellness program delivery. And this is where we found the biggest new trend was that as advisors got larger, they were not relying on the record keeper to deliver a financial wellness or financial education program, but instead they were using their own proprietary or third-party system at a more frequent basis. So the larger advisors out there have invested the time to create their own proprietary system or leverage a third-party tool like a Questus or RPAG or Ramsey Smart Dollar. There's a lot of programs out there. They usually come at a premium cost, but they also come at a higher effective rate. And we're seeing that even advisors with more plans are bringing those solutions to the smaller market, even under $1 million. So that's a big trend that we'll be monitoring as we continue these benchmarking reports. So that's kind of a quick summary of some of our key findings. What we're going to do is talk a little bit about some of the differentiators, then show a demo of the tool, and then take Q&A at the end of the session. So I talked about some of these, but here's some of the differentiators that we see with this Prism 365 report. We have a lot of great insight. Happy to share those with any of you. But this tool is bundled with the best annual fee benchmarking tool. Now, I co-founded PlanFees, so of course I'm going to say it's the best. But I really do think our PlanFees annual fee benchmarking tool is the easiest and best tool in the marketplace to show your annual fees. So having a advisory fee benchmarking report bundled with that is just a no-brainer. The fee averages are derived from retirement plan specialists, which is I think a good differentiator in terms of what we do. We're not looking at a lot of generalists. We're not looking at a lot of one plan advisors. We're talking real retirement experts about what they're doing in the marketplace. And then comparing service frequency is very important. While just saying, I check the box, we do this, but we know that the biggest driver of advisory fees is going to be whether it's a robust and frequent high frequency service model or a low frequency service model, right? So is it 4 meetings a year, 1 meeting a year? And that's going to determine how much a plan is priced. And then our report shows what advisors or what plan sponsors care the most about. There's other reports out there that have maybe a couple dozen different data points, and we cut the fat. We surveyed hundreds and hundreds of advisors in starting this tool, and we asked them what they wanted. And what we found was that the fields that we have are what the plan sponsors and the advisors wanted to show the most. And of course, it's a nice looking report, great data visualizations, and it looks great within your service package. So I thank you for sitting through that and the time. We hope you consider learning more about plan fees and about this Prism 365 report. What we're going to do now is I'm going to hand it over to my colleague David Gantz, and he's going to show a demo of the plan fees tool, the Prism 365 report, and if we have time, we'll even show our annual fee benchmarking tool as well. Take it away, David.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jesse, and hello, everybody. Like Jesse said today, what I want to do is walk you through a demo of that process. And Jesse, if you could just stop sharing your screen, then I can go ahead and share mine. Perfect. But yeah, like Jesse said, I want to show you primarily today our Prism 365 advisor fee and services benchmarking report. But if we have some time, I'll also jump through the Prism report. The great thing about these is that they are both very simple and very easy to run. So it really shouldn't take too much time at all to go through them. But I do want to show you the output of those reports as well, so you get an idea of what your clients and prospects would actually see if you're using these reports. So I'll start with my Prism 365 advisor fee and services report here. And you'll see at the top that we require some basic information about your plan. So we'll ask for the plan name, the total plan assets, and then the number of participants. These are going to affect the universe band that we fall into, and make sure that we're comparing accurately against the correct number or the correct plan sizes. We ask here as well for your current advisory fee. Let's put this as 35 basis points. And if you are charging any additional fees for 338 services, we'll ask for that here as well. Then what we do is we go through and we break down the different sections of services that you're likely offering to your clients. So in investment analysis, we're going to ask if you're doing investment menu selection and monitoring, if that's part of your base fee, how frequently are you doing those types of meetings? Do you have 321 services that you're offering? Are you doing 338 services as well? So you can really select and illuminate what you're doing in terms of all that investment analysis. In provider and fee benchmarking, we ask here if you're doing annual fee benchmarking. Are you doing live bid benchmarking as well? And if so, how frequently are you presenting that to a plan sponsor? In the fiduciary service section, we're looking at here primarily fiduciary education for your clients. So how often are they receiving education and training, and is that included? Are you doing fiduciary process review? And then how often are you taking a look at that with those plan sponsors? And then down here in the employee engagement section, this is where a lot of the big differentiators for advisors become very clear. So being able to say how many education and enrollment days you're offering, this can be something that drastically improves the amount of service that you're giving to a client and can really justify a higher advisor comp fee. What the fee is for those additional days if you are offering them, if you're doing one-on-one employee education or consulting, and then what sort of employee wellness program you're using, if anything at all. So Jesse mentioned, there's obviously options from the record keepers where they have some of their own proprietary tools. You could have some of your own tools that you're using, or you might be using a third party as well. And then down at the bottom here, we have what we call additional value added services. And these are things that you can sort of skim through and see which ones you might be offering to your plan sponsors. You'll notice that on the right there, we can also add in any additional services that you might be adding. So if there's something that you're doing that really sets you apart from other advisors out in the field and you want to make sure that that's highlighted as part of this analysis, you can click on this add your own button there, and it's going to then add that as one of those additional value added services that you're offering as part of your service model. So now what I'll do is I'll walk you through the output of this report. As you saw from the input side there, it took us 2 minutes, and that was explaining every single field that we were going through. So you can imagine that going through it yourself with a client you're already familiar with is probably only going to take you a minute from start to finish. And the output of the report here, as you'll see, is going to really highlight where your service model stacks up versus other plans of similar size. So we've got our title page here. This would include your company logo, obviously your name and your contact information there as well. When we scroll through, we first get a page that just breaks down what all of those different services that you're offering are, gives some information about the benchmark, and then just that list over here on the right. And then as we go through, we're going to start breaking down those individual sections into the output for you here. So you see the additional services that we highlighted on the input side. And again, if you added any of your own, they would appear in here as well. We have the summary of the current advisory fees. So this is going to be comparing as a whole where your advisory fees stack up versus other plans of similar size. When we go over to the Prism report, you'll see that this is actually pulling that same sort of data from there, where you're just comparing it to the low, average, and high of the benchmark universe, which represents roughly the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile of plans of this size. So in this case, our plan is a little bit above the average here, but as we'll be able to highlight, we are offering a pretty high level of service here in this report. We start out with the investment due diligence services. You can see that we have this chart up at the top that talks about some of the different features that we have here. So 321 services, part of the base fee, for example, 94% of advisors are including that as part of the base fee. Investment selection monitoring, 99% of advisors doing that. And then we see the frequency of committee meetings is broken down in this chart below. So in our case, we're doing semi-annually, which only 42% of advisors are doing, where 38% of them are doing annual meetings and 20% doing quarterly. On this next page, we're looking at the fee benchmarking and fiduciary services. Again, going through each of these, we've got the charts that highlight our frequency of live bid RFP. In this case, overwhelmingly, advisors are doing it once every 3 years, but there are a pretty big contingent as well that are doing it every 4 or 5 years. And then the frequency of that fiduciary process review, we have that broken down here as well. In this case, most advisors doing this annually as well. On the employee engagement side, this is where we start to see some of that great value come in for those advisors who are doing additional work from the financial wellness side of things. So for example, here we're seeing one-on-one and employee education consulting included in most cases. Education days offered, the overwhelming are doing between 1 and 4 days. But when it comes to the actual financial wellness program, the vast majority are using the record keeper solutions, and only very few are doing third-party systems or proprietary. So this could be a nice way in our example, we're doing a proprietary financial wellness program where that additional fee could be justified because there's a ton of work that goes into implementing financial wellness for a plan sponsor. And this can really highlight that as part of this analysis here. And then following this, we have this disclosure page where, of course, you'll be able to populate your own disclosure in here and make sure that everything is well taken care of from a compliance perspective. Really, though, that's the entire Prism 365 report in a nutshell. As you can see, it's a very simple process. However, the output can be very powerful and very useful in walking your clients through what that value is that you're adding to their plan. So they don't just see a number on the screen that says, hey, our advisor fee is a little bit higher than average. You can really justify that cost by showing them all the additional value that you're adding from a service perspective. And what I want to do now is actually quickly take you through the Prism report as well, because this is another one of our core reports here that can be super useful when working with a client or especially with a prospect as well. You'll see that when we're on the main PlanFees site, we just have the option to go to either one. I'll jump into our Prism report here. And once again, you'll see we ask for some high-level information at the top: plan name, plan type, whether or not they have a TPA. And the actual data required to run this report is just what you're seeing here on the screen. You'll see that it's 6 fields, 5 if there's no TPA. And we're going to ask for plan assets, number of participants, investment fees, record keeping fees, and advisor fees. And then once we enter that in, we're going to create our Prism benchmark, which is going to pull in the universe of similar plans to compare this one against. You'll see that in my example here, we're looking at plans that are between 3.5 and 6.5 million. And in this case, we're comparing against roughly 2,300 plans that are in that universe. You'll notice as well that we've got these slider bars for the universe that we're looking at. So we're easily able to make this more broad or more narrow as necessary. If I go down to 3 million here on the lower end, for example, you'll see we jump up to 2,800 plans. If we were to go over here on the right up to 7 million, we'll jump up to just over 3,000 plans. And the benchmark universe that we're using here is built off of real plans that have been benchmarked by advisors within the last 3 years. So rather than using 408B2 data, which is going to include plans that never get serviced, potentially includes plans that are up to 10 years old, we wanted to make sure that the plans were accurate. We wanted to make sure that they were up to date, and we wanted to make sure they were plans that were actively serviced by advisors as well. You'll also have the ability here to add a plan participant filter. So if your client does have an exceptionally high or low average account balance and you want to make sure that that's reflected, you can check that box and then narrow down the universe pretty significantly to show that. And then down here at the bottom, we have a chart that summarizes what that output looks like, where we have our plan versus the low, average, and high. And we can see how our plan compares to roughly the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile of plans in the universe. But once we've gone through this, we can then pull up the actual output of the report. And as you can see, this one is a pretty straightforward output as well. Just 5 pages here, includes that title page and the disclosure at the back. But once again, it would have your logo here, your name, your contact information. On the first page, we break down our plan info, benchmark info, and then some of those fields at a high level, just looking at a dollar perspective here at first. And we'll get more detailed as we go along. On the next page, we break out that same chart that you saw on the input side, where we show our plan versus the low, average, and high in terms of investments, record keeping, advisory, total fees, and per participant. So we can see where our plan stacks up and what areas might need more or less attention. There's also some charts down here at the bottom that help to visualize some of those numbers to get a breakdown of what your fees look like, how that roughly compares to other plans in the universe. And on this last page here is where we really visualize what those fees look like. And this can be a very nice place to just tell a story to your clients of what sorts of where they might need attention for their plan. So my example here, as you can see, we're on the high end with investments. We're above the high with our record keeping, but we're right at about the average with the advisory. And this can be a nice place to highlight where some of your other services can be really useful for them as well. So if we're seeing that record keeping fee much higher than we would expect, you can go to that client and say, your record keeping fee is higher than most plans in this size. We'd love to take a look at a live bid analysis for you and really see if we can get that record keeping cost lowered for you, especially with a prospect. That's a really compelling story. Same thing with the investments. If you go to a prospect and say that your investment fee is looking much higher than we would expect for plans of this size, we'd love to explore looking at more efficient share classes for you, or potentially even looking at another platform at your current record keeper, or even, another record keeper altogether to get you access to some of those lower cost funds. So a really nice place here to really show where you as the advisor can add value for this plan sponsor. And then once again, last page here, just a disclosure for you as well. But those were the two reports there through PlanFees. As you can see, very simple and straightforward in terms of reports, but very powerful output that can really help you with telling a story to current clients, to prospective clients, and doing so in a really timely and efficient